Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Now that my two obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And some of my subscribers have awared me that Dr. Jim Stoppani is claiming that it's normal for people to gain 20 pounds of muscle. 20 pounds of muscle in 12 weeks on his Shortcut to Size program. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skill at my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. This is one of these guys I don't like. This came up in the Q&As a few weeks ago. Someone said, hey, why don't I make videos on him? I'm like, let me dig further into him because, yeah, I don't like him. I know that everything he does is about selling garbage supplements. And he's one of those guys that's used his PhD for marketing purposes and doing bad stuff and conning people, ripping people off of their hard-earned money with false claims, which is largely what the supplement industry is about. So even someone who has a PhD, if they're in the supplement industry, they're probably a piece of trash anyways. That just goes with it. If you're selling supplements for a living, you're probably a bad person. Let's be honest here. It's a total charlatan and fraud-based industry. It is. The whole supplement industry is. So you have this, and you've got to look at it and say, wow. Because again, PhD, he knows better. This is someone who knows what the research says on muscle growth. And what I mean is, guys, 20 pounds. And in some cases, he's claiming some people gain 30. All right, the 20 is actually impossible. The 20 hasn't been done. He's like, oh, that's normal. And he says a few have gained like 30. Okay. Anyone know what muscle growth looks like in novice lifters? Like people, as soon as you finish like your neural adaptation phase, right, and you actually start gaining tissue hypertrophy, 1 to 2 pounds of muscle per month. Now, I hate it when people bring up, so does that mean dry or wet? But there is no such thing as dry muscle. How would you even measure dry muscle? That's the stupidest question ever. All muscle is wet muscle in a living creature. Unless you're a dehydrated corpse that has been put in like a jerky making machine, you don't have any dry muscle. You can't measure that. We don't have a machine to even measure that. So we mean actual muscle that includes glycogen and water. It's like when you buy a steak, you're not buying a piece of beef jerky, you're buying a pound of steak. It has water in it. But back to the point, 1 to 2 pounds of muscle. 2 pounds of muscle in your first year of training, if you can maintain for 6 months 2 pounds of muscle per month, that is considered to be exceptional. Your training is probably on point. Your nutrition is on point. You're probably reasonably genetically well off. Like you're not in the bottom of the bucket genetics for gaining muscle. Like people who for a 6-month phase in their first year can successfully gain 2 full pounds of muscle mass have done exceptionally well. You're probably on a really, really, really good program. That's what's been found in the research. This is what people with PhDs actually research who study muscle growth. That's what happens. Now, do a lot of people stand back and say, well, I think I gained more than that? No, you gained more weight than that, and you thought you got leaner, or you thought you didn't gain fat. But the truth is, a lot of times when you are gaining small amounts of fat, when your muscle growth is really going fast, if you're not already obese, you don't notice the fat gain. In other words, you don't feel like you've gained any body fat. So in other words, you might be gaining 3 pounds every month and not notice the fat that you're gaining, let's say over the course of 6 months, right? Because you only gained 6 pounds of fat, but if you gained 12 pounds of muscle, you're thinking, no, I gained 18, 20 pounds of body weight, and it looks like all muscle. It looks like all muscle. But it isn't. You probably have gained some body fat in there. So if you go check this, like when you do DEXA scans and other forms of body composition testing, what we find is that it actually only is a couple pounds of muscle. You've gained fat, you've gained intermuscular fat, you've gained subcutaneous fat, or you're gaining fat maybe in places you're not realizing you're gaining a little bit because it's such a small amount, because a few pounds of fat isn't noticeable. Sorry guys, you don't notice 5 pounds of body fat gain. You really don't, particularly when there's muscle mass going with it that outweighs it because you just look so much more jacked that you don't realize you're getting fatter. And your percentage of body composition probably isn't going up significantly, so you don't notice it. In other words, someone who is 200 pounds at 10% body fat actually has a lot more fat on their body than someone who's 150 at 10% body fat, right? They have more fat, a significant amount of more fat. It's in the pounds, but they're both going to look really, really lean. In fact, the guy who's 10% at 200 is probably going to look leaner, even though he has more pounds of fat. He's going to look like he has less. So that's one of the things that's going on where people get it mixed up. Like, no, I gained 20 pounds in 6 months and I don't think I gained any fat. So I think I gained at least 3 pounds of muscle, but you actually didn't. This is the way you're perceiving it in the mirror. If you got it measured, if it was measured correctly, you'd find it was different. So you have guys like this. He's standing here claiming this bullshit. And he knows it's bullshit. But he's going to sell these programs and he's going to sell people these supplements. And, look, I'm one of the people who will say, hey, for fat loss and body composition and recomping, protein overfeeding has its place, right? It absolutely has its place. I'll be the first one to tell you that exceeding the 1 gram per pound of body weight might be beneficial in a fat loss phase. That's what I did during this last part of my DEXA scan, remember? I just did a DEXA scan. I lost 15 pounds of fat with no net lean tissue loss. That's hard to do as an advanced lifter. Part of my strategy was some protein overfeeding in there. But when it comes to gaining muscle, you don't ever need to exceed the 1 gram per pound of body weight. In fact, you can usually consume less and still maximize muscle growth. This is a guy who's telling people that they need to be loading large amounts of protein, 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight to even gain muscle. That's not supported in the research. But when he's selling you the protein powder, you can be damn well sure that's what he's going to tell you, because you're buying his supplements to fuel it. You're buying his supplements to fuel it. And that's the problem. That is the problem. And then you go start looking at the guy's training programs, and there's nothing that special about them. They're 5-day-a-week programs. He does have the solid compound movements, and I'm not going to lie, but some of the days you're starting with cables and isolation. Literally, if you go look at the shortcut to size, there are days where you are starting the workout with cable isolation work. That's not going to put size on you. We can argue that some of these cable exercises might add a finishing touch and give you a little bit of muscle growth in the smaller muscles. No one's going to... I don't want to really break that down in this video. That's a different argument. But if anyone thinks that isolation movement put pounds of muscle on you, that is not the case. They don't. You're not going to put on several pounds of muscle from doing isolation work, period. I don't care how much of it you do. It's going to be small amounts of it. You're talking about smaller muscles, small amounts of muscle growth. Your big exercises are what put size on you, right? That is where you gain the actual muscle weight. When you're gaining enough muscle that the scale is going up from the muscle weight, I can assure you that's not coming from a cable isolation movement. That is from your big compounds. Always. Always. Unless you are blasting a ton of drugs, in which case muscles are growing that aren't even being trained anyways. But when you go back and look at this stuff, he's running a program to where you change rep ranges every week. So we're not even dealing with a novice program. When you're talking about rotating through rep ranges every single week, we're not getting into intermediate type periodization, right? We're dealing with intermediate lifters. You would never change rep ranges from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 to week 4 for a novice lifter. It doesn't work. You actually slow their progress down if you do that. They need to be making linear progress. So when you start doing that, usually what you find is that novice lifters gain even slower. So he's running intermediate program, which is going to give slower results while claiming insane gains. You only make those big muscle gains as a novice. You don't gain 2 pounds of muscle anymore as an intermediate lifter. You don't. An intermediate program, you're hoping to just gain 5 or 6 pounds of muscle in a year. And intermediate programming is geared around that. And programs to where you are changing rep ranges weekly are absolutely intermediate-based programming. It's going to be slower progression. So a novice is actually going to be shortchanged. So essentially, he is claiming that he can take people and put you on this shortcut to size program, use programming that's designed for slower results because it's more intermediate based, so you make slower progress, so you would gain less muscle in theory. Hypothetically, you'd gain less muscle on this. And claiming not only to exceed the amount of muscle growth we've ever seen in drug-free lifters in a lab, right? In studies, plenty of studies have measured this over the years. He's got a PhD, he would know this. Not only that, but he's claiming that it's faster than what we've seen steroids do in a lab. In other words, 20 pounds of muscle in 12 weeks, right? 20 pounds of muscle, that's 3 months. That is over 6 pounds of muscle growth per month. Are people aware that 15 to 18 pounds of muscle in 20 weeks is what we see in steroid studies? And we can't get natural lifters We can't replicate what sedentary people gain on steroids with natural lifters in the lab. In other words, when you take studies where you put people on 500-600 milligrams of test who don't lift, they gain muscle faster than the fastest muscle growth we can see in drug-free lifters who are lifting weights without lifting. All right, his studies, or not studies, he's claiming that his results exceed what human studies have found even anabolic steroids are capable of doing, by using programming that's not even appropriate for novices. This is a complete con. This is a complete con, not based on reality, not based on results. If he actually was getting these sort of results in people, he would be having people with DEXA scans with before and afters. He would be taking clients and having a DEXA scan reading with all the data public, and then in 12 weeks show them gaining 20 plus pounds of muscle. He'd have multiples of them. And you know what? You know why he won't do it? Because you couldn't even do it with steroids. If he were to put all of them on 500 milligrams of test and on his program and do a DEXA scan before and after, the majority of them wouldn't even be anywhere near 20 pounds of muscle in 12 weeks, even on the drugs in his program. They wouldn't. It's a complete farce. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.